So when I started realizing, like, why have I not been able to feel the real like depth to my feelings? The first thing that came to me was this idea that, like, hey, you're using cannabis to numb out, right? Now, what happened in that moment was also I realized it's not cannabis's fault either. The plant never held the gun to my head. It never told me to connect with it every day. Sure, I might not have known. We never got a user manual for this plant, none of us. But now that I knew better, I could do better. And it was up to me. No one was going to come save the day for me. And so what happened at that point was I started creating structure around, like, okay, I'm only going to connect with cannabis on weekends, because during the weekdays is when I'm most prone to stress. And that's when I was numbing out the most. So I wanted to feel those things, because if I was aggravated at work or any of these things, there needed to be a change. And I needed to be aware of, like, really how frustrated I felt, so that I could have the inspiration necessary and the motivation necessary to make that change. And so what ended up happening was I created that structure where Monday through Friday I would be completely sober. I took a 3-month break right off the bat, like cold turkey. But then when I came back to it, I started doing the structure. I started applying intention, the same things I did in a lot of other areas of my life, but I just never thought to do with cannabis. And we can take it from there. That's when things really started to blow up. And so you can see how when I was unconsciously using, and maybe some people listening can relate to this or resonate with it, it was just a thing I did. I wouldn't even notice, but all of a sudden I'm just smoking, right? It was part of my daily habits. When I became conscious about it, there's this entire like structure now that I have around it. And it's not to like make myself into a rule book or any of those things. It was just like knowing myself enough to know, hey, the pattern was mostly to numb out during stressful situations. So during the most stressful situations, I'm going to specifically set myself a standard to not connect with the plant. Because I knew if I didn't create that structure, it would be so easy for me to go, well, it was a Monday and, I should start Tuesday because 4 days, off, better than 5, whatever crazy stories my mind would come up with, right? Because at that point, cannabis was a coping strategy for me. So whenever you get into things that help you cope and the ego gets entwined into it, you're going to start being able to tell yourself really convincing stories. So it's important that I set that structure. And then from there, now every time I connect with a plant, I'm really understanding what my why is, right? It doesn't mean that I sit there and do an hour of journaling before or anything like that, but it means that there's a conscious intention as to what I'm looking to receive from that medicine, and also what I'm looking to give it in return to complete that energetic loop. And so that's a little bit of the dichotomy between, what is cannabis and then what is specifically conscious cannabis.
Yeah, really beautiful, comprehensive there, Ryan. And I just wanted to reflect back, because so much of what you said, like in a strange way, I came across your stuff through Aubrey Marcus maybe last summer. And I've been in relationship with cannabis for like 6 years before that. And it had never been like a particularly bad habit. It had been profoundly insightful. It had been integral to healing processes. And I had kind of had some degree of discernment about, I'm going to take a break for a little while and so on. But it wasn't until last year that I ended up undergoing precisely what you've described. I took a 4-month break and got to the point where it was kind of, I could not smoke cannabis again. And that was a crazy thing for me, because I had been so identified. Like, finding cannabis for me was like finding a missing part of myself, where I was like, this was so meant to be. It's like finding your romantic partner or something, Yeah. And so, and then coming out of that, your suggestion of like once a week or like on weekends, confining to weekends, has just fit really, really well.